we recognize our responsibility to advance reconciliation and improve access to services. And importantly, one of the motivations for starting this program was to increase access to school psychological services, particularly in rural and remote Northern and Indigenous communities. And this is really consistent with the call from the profession of psychology to improve equitable access to psychological services. So um, we hold that as an important aspect of our program. Yeah, and we thought we'd just also put some faces to names as you see them on the website. I'll note that this offering is through the Office of Professional Learning. You might gain access through the Faculty of Education, but this is being offered through the OPL. So my name is Dr. Simon Lasengo. I'm a psychologist, assistant professor teaching in the School and Applied Child Psychology program, and I'll be your primary contact for questions about course content or program sequence and things like that. And for anything related to application requirements and things like that, the application process, David Rory, senior program assistant who couldn't join us today, will be available. All right, next slide. So yeah, we're really excited to offer this Masters of Education program, really which prepares students to become skilled practitioners that support the academic, social, behavioral, and mental health needs of children and youth. And it's grounded in this, what we call a scientist practitioner model, where we integrate theory, research, and clinical practice to equip students with competencies required to be effective in assessment, intervention, consultation, and prevention in schools and across community settings with children and youth in particular. Next slide. So the audience for this presentation is really for you all, the prospective students, including maybe you're a K-12 educator looking for a change, for more autonomy. Maybe you've met a school psychologist and you really value the work that they do. And this presentation will also address some of the needs of school districts who may be host practicum sites for our students. And I know there's a lot of school psychologists who have been really clamoring to have this program be developed. And we welcome them, and we're going to really rely on all of you to become the field supervisors of these prospective students. Okay, next slide. So I want to get in just before we start. Some of you may not know what a school psychologist is. And really, I just wanted to give you a snapshot. This by no means encompasses the complexity and the nuance of each professional. But in BC, at least, to be a school psychologist, you typically require a master's or a doctorate. And it's a regulated profession who are trained to do assessment, diagnosis, intervention, and consultation as it relates to learning, development, and mental health of children and youth. So kind of a narrow and focused scope, but a really important one. A psychologist, previously called a registered psychologist or now a licensed psychologist in BC, requires a doctorate. And you're trained as a regulated psychology professional, either in school psychology, clinical psychology, or counseling psychology, actually. And your scope of practice is full spectrum, depending on your area of competence. And you can work in a broad range of settings. And for school counselors, often this gets confused with a school psychologist. The school counselor is separate, and it's typically an educator or a counseling professional who provides individual or group counseling to students and supports with student support services in schools. Okay. So why consider a profession in school and applied child psychology? Obviously, I'm super jazzed about it, and I think it's the greatest profession, but I may be biased here. But we're involved in learning and achievement, mental health and well-being, consultation and collaboration, assessment. I've mentioned these things, and inclusive education. Really, we do these things across different tiers. And when I say tiers, it's like it's across all students, for some students, and for the small percentage of students who need intensive support or assessment. Um, we know in Canada and in BC, there's a significant shortage of school psychologists, as with some other professions. Um, but there's increased student needs, especially after COVID. We know that there's long assessment wait times. Some people talk about waiting up to 5 years, 2 to 5 years. We also know that there's recruitment challenges. This program is actually the only program in BC for school psychology. And we've been closed for the admissions have been closed for the past 2 years. There's retirements in the professions, and there's limited access in rural and remote communities, and we know that. And this previously, this program was an in-person program, and this is why we're looking to build local capacity through this kind of what we call a grow your own model of training. And I'll talk a bit more about that in a sec. So why join our program in particular? There are other programs out there, but we think that we will provide, extensive practical experience, early and ongoing practical opportunities, followed by a full-time internship. There'll be hands-on training opportunities for a variety of things. And you'll get comprehensive skill development. We've got a good track record through our master's and PhD program. Our Master of Education program has a very good reputation in the community for training strong professionals, and we hope to continue that through this offering. We're going to have a cohort-based model that supports learning, and students, graduates of our programs often talk about the benefits of having that cohort, meaning that you have each other to support through this pretty intensive program. And as I mentioned, it'll be a synchronous online offering. There is some short 2-week component in the second summer where you will be in person at the UBC Vancouver campus for us to see how you're doing and to make sure that you're ready to start a practicum in schools. And there is a very good, strong career pathways. There's at least 25 open positions at any given time. Last I checked, there was about 100 open positions over a year on various employment sites. So there's definitely a need. We know there's a need, and this program is meant to address that. All right. So as a program overview, I'm going to start going into some of the course content and the structure. But really, generally, the training emphasizes evidence-based, ethical, and professional decision-making. We value a strong commitment to equity, diversity, indigeneity, human rights, and social justice. And students learn to work at individual, group, and systems level to develop the ability to link assessment to intervention and to support diverse learners and communities with cultural humility and clinical skill. So as an overview of the course format, we have here like it's over 3 years. It's a continuous program. It's not quite flexible in that there's a very distinct course sequence that you need to follow in order to graduate. So the first cohort will start July 2027, and we'll follow actually that cohort over the full 3 years, and won't admit another cohort until the end of that 3 years. So not till, if you miss this admission round, we won't admit another round until 2030 at the earliest. So I understand that doesn't quite work for everyone's schedule, but we know there's a strong demand for it. And typically when in admissions, for our master's program, we get around over 100 applicants. So we're trying to meet the needs of the community here. The course format is online synchronous, as I mentioned. So the first year, you'll have 1 to 2 courses per semester. The second year, again, 1 to 2 courses per semester. and you'll have kind of the in-person component in the summer for one of the courses. And in the third year, there's no coursework, but you're going to be in schools on an internship 4 to 5 days a week, and there'll be monthly online meetings with the cohort to talk about cases and to connect with each other. And then during year 1 and 2, in terms of practical training in schools, in the first year, you'll shadow a school psychologist, ideally 1 day a week. And then the second year, that's a more intensive practica where you're working with a school psychologist 1 to 2 days and actually doing some of the work that you'll be learning to do. So that coursework in year 1 and 2 is really important to your training. Okay, I'm going to break down each year a little bit. I'm not going to go into a lot of details. You can find descriptions of these courses online. But the first year really sets out the foundation of the program and your knowledge of school psychology. We start off with ethics and legal issues in school and applied child psychology. We get into the foundations of psychological measures. We get into foundations of human development. Uh, there's a open online course on reconciliation through Indigenous education. There's a course on intervention and on psychopathology. And then there's one course in the spring on school-based consultation. And then year 2 is where the summer begins in 2028 in July. That's one of our most intensive courses. And if you speak with anyone that have done the program, it's one of the foundational courses. So it's our practicum and cognitive assessment. It requires videos for you to video record yourself administering a cognitive assessment with a child in order to meet competencies. So as you start thinking about the program, start to get your contacts with children you might know that be willing to be practice subjects. And then in September, you'll start a practicum, as I mentioned, that goes the whole year. And you'll have a course on social emotional assessment, a course on assessment and positive behavior supports, and then in the next summer, database individualization of academic interventions. And so that's the bulk of your coursework. And then year 3, as I mentioned, is your fully in-person internship. And I don't know if I mentioned this throughout those years, the intention is that you're connecting with a local school district and you would follow with your supervisor from shadowing to practicum to internship. And some of you might be working in a district and you might have some connections already. So the in-person component for these practica is really in your local school district. Okay. So some important expectations and considerations for this program. As I mentioned, there is this on-campus component from August 11th to 25th. And so we'll support you with finding residency if you need it, place to stay at a discounted rate. But you'll be responsible for travel. And really, not only is this for part of the course, but also to build community within your cohort, for you to meet people in person and because these people will be your support system throughout this program. In terms of cohort progression, as I mentioned, it is a 3-year continuous cohort model with no option to enter part way. It's quite intensive and quite new for those of you who may know the program. We anticipate a cohort size between 20 and 30 to make this program financially feasible and to support learning across students. In terms of professional registration, so when you graduate, the program is designed to meet licensure requirements in BC, but it may also meet requirements in other jurisdictions. In terms of technology and assessment materials that you might require, all the typical things you might need to have to do a course. Some of our assessments are administered using an iPad. That might be a cost you want to consider. And also, you'll be encouraged to work with your local school district to see if you can access and use some of their assessment materials. And there's a letter that we'll talk about in a bit that you'll use to communicate with your school district. Um, it's important. Preference will be given to applicants who've already established or can establish or have shown beginnings of commitments from school districts and local school psychologists. So if you're a teacher, if you're connected with your district, to start those conversations as early as possible. If you're not connected with a school district, that's okay. We've provided a letter that you can use to connect with your local school district. And you're welcome to reach out to us if you need any support with that. In terms of access and financial support, it is important to recognize it as a professional program. This is labeled as a part-time program when you're applying for bursaries, but it is a fairly intensive program. In terms of whether you can work at the same time as doing the program, depending on the admissions and who we get join the program. Majority of the courses may be held in the evening so that you can work during the day, or perhaps there'll be an option to carve out one day a week during two where courses are taken. So that hasn't quite been determined yet, but you're welcome to continue working as a teacher or wherever you are for part of the time. But also know that it is a quite course-intensive program. Okay, going on to the next slide, district collaboration and responsibilities. As I mentioned, you're encouraged to reach out to them. And if you're a school district, some of the things where this program can't happen without your support. And we're calling on partner sites to help with access to assessment materials and appropriate workspace. Particularly as a rural remote program, we want to support those districts in rural remote locations. And so we're going to call on you to, if you have those materials, to help us out. We do have some materials at our site, but to ship them back and forth and to service the needs of all students is not all that possible. We also call on districts to help with supervision by licensed school psychologists and psychologists that may be employed in the district, and to give back to the next generation of school psychologists and to help with that recruitment and retention. There'll be opportunities for, and of course, those students that work in your district, they'll be offering services and likely support the services and amplify and improve the services you're offering in your districts. Obviously, we'll provide support and guidance throughout the process, and placements availabilities will depend on district capacities, and we do encourage students to reach out. And if you're a school psychologist, not sure about whether or not you can supervise or if you have that competency, we're going to build that into the program as well. There'll be professional development opportunities for field supervisors to brush up on their supervision skills. So this program, as I mentioned, is designed for the BC context, but it is open to others. We've had some conversations with folks in the Yukon and other Western provinces in Western Canada, and we know there's a strong need across Canada. So this program will likely meet the requirements in those areas as well. Okay, next slide. So as I mentioned throughout, there's opportunities to collaborate. We're really relying on the community to support us with the delivery and success of this program. So if we're interested, you just go back to the slide on collaboration opportunities. Yeah. Oh, I think we're missing that slide. That's okay. If you are a school psychologist and you're interested in being a supervisor, please feel free to reach out to me. Or to reach out to future applicants. If you're a school district interested, please don't hesitate to reach out. Um, if you're able to offer bursaries to students to take our program with short commitments, sometimes there's commitments to return back to the school district to obtain a bursary. Um, those are uh, those are agreements that we're willing to support. And if you're an interested instructor or a field supervisor, or you have a doctorate and you have an interest in a particular course, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. Okay, so let's go into application requirements. There will be a separate session in the fall of this year where David's going to go over the application process. So I'm just going to go over the prerequisites um, so that you're ready for the start of the program. And you have time to take anything that you might be missing. So it's time to dust off your transcript and take a look at your courses. We do have a pretty high standard for this program, a B plus average in third and fourth year level coursework. If you have a particular reason why you might not have reached that, we're willing to consider that with a description of personal circumstances that you may have been going through. But there's a minimum of 18 credits in psychology, educational psychology, or special education. As a note, I was a teacher before entering this program, and many of those things worked out. There's a requirement for a course on basic interviewing skills, and there's a list of particular equivalent courses on our website. A coursework, undergraduate coursework of some kind in human development, and senior level undergraduate coursework in statistics. And then evidence that you've worked professionally or in volunteer with school age population is important. And obviously, if you're a teacher, you'd have that experience. Okay, so we can go to summary highlights. So as I mentioned, the program starts July 2027. It's 3 years continuous. It's an intensive program, but it is labeled as a part-time program. It's 1 to 2 courses per semester with the practical in-person training components. And admissions open this fall 2026. But we wanted to get this information session out to you all so that you can start preparing and connecting with your local school districts to start bridging those relationships. Okay, so I think we're going to go to Q&A. Okay, I see a chat in Zoom. I can answer that. So someone asked, when is the deadline for the program? The deadline for applications will be December 2026, and admissions will open sometime in September, our hope, of 2026. So, is the program available for international students? If you're an international student who's located in BC and you can develop a partnership, obviously preference will be given to local students who have those relationships. But if you're an international student who has established a relationship, then certainly we'll be open to your admissions. But maybe that's a question for David. Oh, great question, the first one. Is the internship paid? Well, that's going to be a conversation with the local school district. But we have a good track record in the past where all school districts we've worked with have paid a reasonable amount to students during internship. Students are not typically paid for their year one where they're just shadowing, or year two where they're only working 1 day a week. But certainly for the internship, it's been the expectations of school districts to pay. If we're in a remote community without these thresholds. Yeah, if there's no school psychologist in your local district, sometimes there's a school psychologist in the neighboring school district, or you might need to, or that's willing to supervise in your district to support your services. Alternatively, there could be an agreement with a school district, and I've spoken to a few school districts in these remote sites where they really do want a school psychologist and they're willing to pay for an outside or a private psychologist to supervise you within the school. And that almost guarantees that you'll stay within uh, the community and become their school psychologist. So just because there's none in your current community, that's a great avenue for you to advocate for a potential position. For those of us in rural and remote areas with no school psychs, will we complete the requirements uh, in year 1, 2? I think that's similar question. Um, if you're working, if you're working, then it's the same sequence. Whether you're working or not working, there is no flexibility in changing the sequence. It'll still require 3 years. And an internship is required to complete the program. Expected hours of classwork per week, class time out of class. This question, it's a great question. It's really hard to answer. It depends on every individual. The typical recommendation that I see out there is 2 hours um, per hour of course of class time to prepare, whether that's readings or doing videos or preparing things like that. And different courses take different amounts of time, so that's something to consider as well. Um, but with 2 courses a week, each course is about 3 hours per week, and there's about 13 um, classes per term for a course. So you can kind of do the math on that to figure out your schedule. What if your district doesn't have someone to shadow as they contract people and are unable to fill positions? I think I mentioned that that is almost the ideal scenario. If there's no one, that would be a great place to advocate with your school district to bring in some people. And if your school district needs help finding someone, I have many connections to school psychologists in other districts. We can make that work. But it could start at a school psychologist level, or could start at a school district level. Um, yeah. Would social work courses related to casework or family work count towards 18 credit? Without seeing that coursework, I can't tell you for sure. So take a look at the requirements, see if it matches. If there's a particular question you're looking at, you're welcome to contact David, who will be able to answer those questions. Um, yeah, I won't be answering specific course requirements in this Q&A. It's almost impossible to do those comparisons in the moment. So typically when it gets nuanced, you'll need to submit a syllabus of that course, and that'll help us determine whether it's equivalent or not. So again, go dig up your records. Hopefully you kept those syllabi, but you'll actually need those syllabi when you register with the college, which is the regulatory body when you graduate to become a professional. So you didn't think you needed those syllabi, but you're going to need them in order to graduate. Um, how many people are admitting to the program? It's not for sure yet, but we're aiming for a cohort size between 20 and 30. So depending on the applicants um, and our capacity, that'll help us determine it. If we don't apply this year, can we apply next year? As I mentioned, it's a 3-year continuous program. So the next rotation won't be until 2030 at the earliest. So 2027 would be the first intake of this cohort. And that's one of the reasons for the larger cohort size, um, to follow that cohort over the 3 years. It's a different model than other institutions are doing, and we hope it'll be successful. How long do we have to complete the required course? As I mentioned, it's a continuous program, so it is really important that you follow the sequence. If you miss a course or you fail a course or life happens, unfortunately, there are no other courses happening until the next 3 years. So we'll do whatever we can to support you through that program. We have growth plan and remediation sequences to support students. Um, but we want to don't be planning a major vacation in the middle of the program. Uh, Will we evaluate learning for those and a master's in a degree in counseling psychology? I mean, obviously, we'll accept any equivalent courses if you've already got a master's degree in counseling. But if you speak with professionals, and that's why I wanted to differentiate counseling psychology and school psychology are two very different professions. Counseling psychology is focused on individual therapy, and you've got great skills there that are going to transfer and support your work. But the competencies in school psychology really focus around assessment and those assessment skills to deliver standardized assessments is quite unique. It's a restricted activity, meaning that no one else can do it except psychologists. So there's nothing equivalent in the counseling psychology realm at the master's level. I currently work in independent school. Is it okay? No, there's no preference for public or independent. I don't think I said public, but that's a great clarification. Independent schools would totally work for that. Is there opportunity to complete a thesis to continue on to the PhD? So this is a Master's of Education program. And so in order to move on to a PhD, you would require a master's, MA. So this is not a track towards a PhD. That doesn't mean you couldn't go on to a doctorate. There are different types of doctorates. There's PsyDs and EdDs, and different programs are opening up across the country for PsyDs or educational doctorates in school psychology. So doing this program doesn't preclude you from doing a doctorate further down the road. But if your interest is primarily getting a PhD, then doing our in-person track MA PhD in school psychology is the one to look into. What if all the requirements except the interviewing course, can I take it once yeah, so if you take a look at our website under application requirements, you'll see that there's conditional acceptance considered. Obviously, it's best if you start looking into that course now, but obviously if you're enrolled in it for next spring and we accept you, you'll be admitted to the program, no problem if you're just missing one course. I think if you're applying, if you don't have every yeah, as I mentioned, there's conditional acceptance. So you're totally welcome to apply as long as you demonstrate that are going to meet those requirements before the start of the program. There won't be time while you're in the program to take another course. So it really needs to get done beforehand. Given the high demand, how come there's not more people admitted? That's a great question. We'd love to admit more. As I mentioned, it's an intensive program. It's an intensive program on faculty, instructors, and on the community. You can imagine 30 students will require simultaneously 30 practicum sites and supervisors. There are approximately 200 school psychologists in the province, and not all of them are available to supervise. So we would love to increase it, but also some of the courses require us to review videos of administration of those tests I've mentioned, and it is quite a heavy load to review all that material. So in order to ensure quality training, this is the number that we're aiming for at this time. But great question. Can you clarify the difference again between job description of a counselor and a school psychologist? I think there's many nuances and there's many descriptions online of the difference between a school counselor and a school psychologist. So I provided a real snapshot, but maybe I'll leave that one because it can get quite nuanced. But in short, a school counselor does individual therapy or counseling, and a school psychologist is trained in assessment, interventions, and consultation. But there's certainly overlap. Will the program hold a number of spots for people in northern communities? Alternatively, limit the number of spots for people who live in the lower mainland. Yes, preference will be given to rural and remote locations. The exact number of spots, I can't provide that at this moment. It'll depend on the applicants, but certainly preference will be given to rural and remote sites. Do all requirements need to be met? I think I've answered that one already. Can school psychologists work outside of the school in private practice as well? That's a great question for the profession and something we're trying to get clarity from the college. So potentially, we don't have the answer yet. Why is this program? Uh, oh, I think this one got bumped up. Why is this program labeled a part-time when the coursework is intensive? The tuition or full-time equivalent and internship will be full-time. Yeah, that's a challenge of just how programs are categorized. Unfortunately, I have no control over that. But feedback noted. To clarify my understanding, prospective students are encouraged to begin reaching out to school districts prior to applying to initiate collaborations, something for internships. Yes. You're encouraged to reach out to your school districts. There'll be a letter to help you describe what that means on our website. I don't think it's quite there yet, but we'll get that as soon as possible. Can I take 362 online? You can take a look at the equivalents. I'm not 100% sure if you can take it online. I'll have to look into that, but you may also do that. And there's several options being offered. That course requires practice of basic therapeutic skills. So I imagine there are some options for that. When will you determine if coursework will be in the evenings or in a single day? We would need to know this before applying. Yes, we're going to know this for sure by September. Part of it is the preference for instructors and things like that. So we will get back to you on that. Does supervising school psychologists have to? No, that's a great question. Supervising field supervisors do not have to have a PhD. They're at a master's level. My reference to the doctorate, I should have been more clear. That's for instructors. All instructors at UBC must have a doctorate. That doesn't mean school psychologists can't be involved in some of our courses. And we have plans for them to be involved in our assessment courses to help with reviewing videos and support with training. So, but for the field supervisors in Practica, many of them have masters. Next one. Okay, I'm going to skip that question about stats. It sounds very specific. The interviewing course, there's a long list of equivalent courses if you do take a look at that link that you can take a look at. So that's that. Will there be any exceptions for the admission criteria, for example, for someone with social sciences but not psychology? Yeah, I actually don't have a bachelor's of psychology. It's 18 credits in psychology. So in my particular instance, I took unclassified student credits in psychology to meet that requirement. And I had a teacher ed degree as well. So everyone will be different. And yeah, we're open to different pathways, but you need to meet the requirements as listed. What's the impetus for redesigning the MEd program over the last several years? As I mentioned, and we're quite excited about it, it's really to improve access to the program as an online offering. It took quite a lot of research to look into that and to make it feasible. We want to improve access to rural and remote communities. We want to increase recruitment and retention of school psychologists in rural and remote communities. And the people that live out there and do training, they're more likely to stay in their own community. So that's the major reason for that offering. Have you had Alberta applicants before who have been successful in getting licensure in Alberta? Yes, we've had many in our in-person masters and MEd program. We've had many people that have gone to Alberta and meet their requirements. But I can't promise that for sure, as licensure is always changing across provinces. Would holders of a bachelor's in psychology be preferred? No, not necessarily. Um, as long as you meet the requirements and you've got the appropriate experience, it'll be some combination that'll be a preference by the admissions committee. Is school psychology only practiced in schools or also with, that's a great question. I love this question because school psychology, as our BC Association of School Psychologists says, school psychology is a practice, not a place. Although we have school in front, it is its own profession and a quite established profession at this point, with a different kind of theoretical lens than, say, clinical psychology or counseling psychology. So yes, you can practice. It's designed so you can practice in schools and in other settings where children learn, children and youth learn, and youth can go up to age 24, 25, depending on your orientation. Whether or not you can practice privately is a debate we're still looking into. As my other hat is president of the BC Association of School Psychology. Okay, next question. Is it possible to set up a meeting with an advisor to review admissions requirements? No, we're not going to specifically review individual admissions until the admissions review process. But you're welcome to send specific questions to David if you do. Why do we reach out to school districts? Is it just school psychologist willingness, or do we need to also have school district approval? As I mentioned, it's your preference will be given to those who have relationships with school districts, because it's more likely that you'll be able to get a field supervisor in your site and you've started that relationship, and it'll show prior commitment. If you haven't, or if you're in the Lower Mainland, we will have options for those people who are in the Lower Mainland, as we know that we have many connections in the Lower Mainland. But as I mentioned, the preference will be given to rural sites. But it doesn't preclude you from applying. Or if you're willing to go to other communities, there may be school districts that reach out to us that are looking for people. And if you're willing to move to a different community, that might be an option. So yeah, if you're interested, don't let that be a barrier. What type of assessments will we learn to do for ADHD, psychosocial autism? Great question. So within the scope of school psychology, at the moment, it's learning disabilities, intellectual disabilities. We offer our training to our students in ADHD and anxiety. Currently, it's not clear whether school psychologist professionals can diagnose those independently. But for autism spectrum or other complex mental health disorders, those are not within the scope of our training for school psychologists. It's a good question. We'll get into the nuance when you get into the program, but for sure, it's important to know what you're getting into. I encourage you to speak with a school psychologist to understand the nuance of what they do and what you might be interested in. Is there a preference given to those who have more recent? No preference for recent undergrad or those who've been in the field for a while. Yeah, we actually encourage teachers who are looking for a change, wanting more independence, to apply to the program, because they typically have a really good understanding of the system. But if you are a recent grad, it's just important that you've got experience working with children and youth to be successful in the program. Okay, lots of questions. We got about 10 more minutes. I'm gonna try to get in as many as I can. Um, yeah, I think I've spoken to this. Many rural sites don't have a school psychologist, and we understand that. But as I mentioned, it's a great opportunity to advocate to your school districts to create a placement. And often in those places, they're willing to pay or provide a bursary or to pay for an outside psychologist to provide that supervision. So, um, uh, and if they don't know what a school psychologist is, it's your opportunity to educate them. So yeah. Uh, how is the interview process going to look? Again, we'll go into that when we get to the application process and requirements. But typically, it's an interview. If you're well, typically it's the what we shortlist from the many applications we might receive, and if you're invited for an interview, then we'll have a brief interview with you where we'll ask you a select number of questions, which we don't release in advance. But we assess your fit for the program. So uh, that's the process. Um, and typically, you'll be notified around March. The deadline for applications ends in December, and then we go through review in March, and then you'll be notified in around April. But we'll go further in that in the fall. The salary for a typical school psychologist, well, that's a great question, and it varies by district. This school psychologists in particular in most school districts in BC are are on the same salary grid as teachers, but with a master's, you're paid at the master's level salary grid. So you can kind of take a look at each district to see what their salary ranges are. I believe it ranges from 70 or 70 to about 120, 130, depending on district. And on top of the salary grid, many school psychologists, not all, get a stipend called a position of special responsibility. And there's a specific amount, but I'm not going to state that here. Okay, can you speak more to course required around basic interviewing skills? As I mentioned on the website, there's a link that you can find that gives you all the different equivalents for that course. From what I hear, it's a great course to have. Um, will it allow us to conduct psych ed assessments? Yes, that is the primary training that you'll be getting as a school psychologist, is to learn to do what's called a psychoeducational assessment. And in those assessments, it's a real privilege to get to know families in depth. And a child, you interview parents, you administer cognitive assessments, academic assessments, and social emotional behavioral assessments. You do observation in schools. And from all that information, you come to a strength-based, ideally, conclusion about how to best support that child. And often parents are very thankful for the work that you do, and that's usually what keeps people in the profession. They really love that work. But we do more as school psychologists than psych ed assessments. Great. Who would be the best person to reach out to regarding prereqs, specifically requiring that would be David Roy, but make sure that you've reviewed the list before contacting us. Yes. Oh no, not yes. Can you become a licensed psychologist after this program? So the difference in BC, at least, a licensed school psychologist is what this program will be training you for. A licensed psychologist, as I mentioned, requires a doctorate and has full scope of practice. So no. What if we can't get access to the syllabi from years ago? It's not make it or break it. If there's if there's questions about equivalency, then we're going to require those syllabi. So as long as you're from a reputable institution, and the course title is clear and things like that, then you're going to be okay. Currently a BCBA. Again, there's very specifics. I encourage you to take a look at our requirements, but we welcome people that have training in behavioral analysis. Yeah, totally. The next question is Yukon count as rural and remote? I was a teacher in the Yukon. I have good relationships in the Yukon. So yes, the Yukon would, I mean, would we give preference to the Yukon? Maybe. But certainly the Yukon are, people in the Yukon are welcome to apply. How many years of practice should my field supervisor have? There is no set amount for number of years to be a field supervisor. So I'll leave it at that. What time of day? Yeah, I'd love to give you that answer. It depends on our instructors, which we're looking into. But as with any course, you're going to need to be able to be flexible with the days of the week that the courses are offered, because with a 30-person cohort and being online synchronous, we can't guarantee when the course dates are. What's the next available intake for admissions and cutoff date for applying? I think I've described that. How many credit hours are each online course? That's also on the website. A standard course online is 3 credits, and the total credits for the program is 48. Is it possible for the practicum to be done overseas and not in Canada or US? Not something I've thought about intently, but as long as a practicum site is established, potentially. Have there been prior candidates that worked full-time as a teacher during the program? No, there have not been. There have been many people in the program who've been teachers in the past. Working full-time and doing this course is likely not possible, but every individual is different. Perhaps you're a superstar that can work nonstop from daylight to daybreak and beyond that, but it's quite unlikely. But at certain part-time working to make it financially possible, certainly people have worked to some extent while doing the program. How many references do I need? Again, take a look at the requirements when we open up the applications in the fall. The specifics will be in there. Are resource learning teachers preferred in the program? Not necessarily, but I think they have great experience. I think they're ideal candidates to enter the program. But that'll depend on the admissions committee to determine. Do you provide a letter to apply for a student permit? That's a question for David Rory, and you're welcome to reach out to him. I believe this is for international students. What qualities do you think someone should have? Oh, I like this question. What qualities do you think someone should have to make a good school psychologist? I was actually reflecting on this the other day, and I think I went to a presentation where the ideal qualities would be humility and curiosity. Yeah, I'll leave it to that. But great question. Is it research-based? No. This it's evidence-based, developed evidence-based, but you're not going to be required to do a thesis or a research project. There's opportunities within our program if you want to work with some of our faculty doing research projects. We have some really cool projects always on the go, so that's possible, but it's not required. Will we be supporting finding practicum placements? As I mentioned, preference will be given to people who've made that effort to connect and develop their sites. but if you do not, you can still apply and indicate you're in the Lower Mainland or you're willing to travel. Those will be considered. How many hours per week should be expected? I think I've talked about that. Perhaps you can watch the recording and find it. Is that school district in BC or anywhere in Canada? I think we're open to anywhere in Canada. I think I've answered paid internship. Does supervisor have to be a school psychologist? I've mentioned that. I mentioned that already. GPA requirements is calculated on the last degree. Take a look at the requirements. It's quite specific around GPA. Our prereqs the same if you have a master's. Okay, I'll skip that one as well. How does your program? I'm not going to speak to another program, but we have spoken with them and they're supportive. Are prerequisites the same if you have a master's? Again, that's about prereqs. I've mentioned securing a placement. I've mentioned stats. There is no specific requirement for that collaboration with a school district or supervisor, just wherever you are in that path of connecting with them, you're going to put that in your application letter or package. Are the careers other than school psychology other than school psychologists for this degree? I mean, yeah, the training that you receive in this program is quite diverse. If you choose not to be a school psychologist, I mean, certainly you could apply it to many other professions that don't require it. But I think the options are, yeah, that's a great question. I don't know the answer to that. Is this program similar? Okay, we talked about that. How is work-life balance as a school psych versus being a full-time teacher? That's a great question. And school psychologists still work kind of the 9 to 4 job in schools. Every school district's different, but typically they have much more autonomy and flexibility than a full-time teacher. They manage their own schedules typically. They go from different schools, serving different students, different schools, and um, yeah, and sometimes they're allowed to work from home. Sometimes they have an office, a district office. So yeah, there's a lot of flexibility, and typically there's good work-life balance. But I know many are facing heavy workloads because of the shortage. So yeah, that's something. Are there accommodation supports available for students? Yeah, UBC has many supports through Access and Diversity Office who will be able to support. And I like to hope that our program would be accommodating to students with neurodiversity, as we are the ones who support and assess those individuals. Okay, I'll skip that question. If we are level B, if you're level B qualified, what that means is you've taken a course in academic assessment. That course won't exempt you from our coursework because our coursework is a bit more intensive for the school psychology program, but you'll certainly have a leg up. You won't get a preference, but you'll still be required to take our academic assessment course. Can it be practicum and internship? Yeah, absolutely. You can complete it in 2 different districts if you have those partnerships. Yes, current K to 12. I said it depends on the committee, but I would imagine that having experience in the schools is preferred. Next. No. If you applied to our master's program, which is very in-person master's program and which is really competitive, it was so hard. I was part of that committee. It was so hard selecting. We had over 150 applicants, so we understand that you would not be held that wouldn't be held against you at all. Undergraduate work in human development. Okay, that's got skipped. 62, and it's never too late to enter the program if this is your lifelong dream. It's never too late. Uh, Undergraduate coursework in human development. Okay, that's about requirements, so I'll skip that. If understanding. No, you don't need to be in BC as long as you have a school district that's willing to host you for the 3 years. Will the MEd preclude one from completing a PhD in the future? No, as I mentioned, maybe I'll let you find that answer that I described previously. Can you work in children's hospitals, bedside schools, and other? Absolutely. They're different sites. You know, I can't control where sites would hire you, but yeah, that would depend. But certainly your skills would be useful there, depending on the site. For applicants who completed their education in French. Oh, great question. I don't believe there's a requirement, but I would leave that question for David. Can you qualify to be a registered psychologist in Alberta? Yeah, yes is a short answer, but it's complicated. But yes. What type of work can school psychs do in summer? Can they provide diagnoses under supervision? Some of these questions are complex and we're still waiting for clarity from the college, so I'm going to leave that question out. They're more professional practice questions that are nuanced and still evolving. Right, oh, that's a good question. How did you get 150 plus work hours to meet the college requirement? Again, that's nuanced. We're in conversations with them, but our program would certainly meet it. You'll be doing work through year 1 and year 2. If that remains the requirement, we would be okay. Will we learn how to administer diagnostic assessments? No. So as I mentioned, complex assessments like ADOS and ADIR for autism, and other, you will learn to administer adaptive functioning questionnaires like the Vineland and the ABAS for intellectual disabilities. That, as I mentioned, learning disabilities, intellectual disabilities are the core types of psychoeducational assessments that you learn to do. What happens if someone changes districts during the program? That's fine. That you would just need to establish relationships, or I mean, it's possible. Do you happen to know if this meets the TRB, Teacher Regulation Board requirements for a master's? Yes, it does. Do we need to secure placements prior to admissions? As I mentioned, it's a preference, not a requirement. Um, I can't confirm whether online courses are available. I think I mentioned that. Is it a problem that I graduated 14 years ago? Don't believe so, but again, I'll check with David on that. Complete a missed presentation due to work. Yes, this is recorded. All right, we're powering through at 13 left. Can I complete my project? Yes, you can. Do you have to apply for funding? No. Do we have to? I think I've answered that already about shortages. I've answered that one as well. Where can we find? Answered that. So now we're starting to get repetitive. Of course, cramp work BC is possible. Have you? I mean, yeah, if you're a student from UBC Okanagan, you're welcome to apply. As I mentioned, school psychologists at this time, or even in this program, aren't trained to do autism assessments. So no, you would not be doing that. Having graduate coursework factor in, there's many factors. So yes and no. Will we be qualified to, yes, level C assessments are cognitive assessments that are restricted to psychologists with a master's minimum. So yes. Uh, if you have a special ed, master's of special ed, you need to take a look at our requirements to determine that. What type of interventions do school psychologists offer after assessments? A variety, and you'll be learning that in our interventions course. Yeah, I'll leave it at that. If you don't have 18, no, you need to have the 18 psychology course credits. The cost of the program's on the website. Are there any scholarship grants we could apply for? Yes, there are many. You can take a look at our website for details, or depending on your demographic, there's different options available to you. The admissions won't be purely based on GPA, so please don't let that discourage you. But a minimum B plus is a requirement, but we understand life happens. Does this program focus on inclusive education? I think that's a principle that we support, but it isn't it isn't primarily only about inclusive education. Okay, I'll skip that last question. We made it through. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. I hope that was helpful to some of you, and I'm sure there'll be many questions to come. I hope this recording helps other people with similar questions. So thank you, everyone who asked those very thoughtful questions, some with quite insightful questions. I'm sorry if I dismissed your question. I'm just trying to be respectful of everyone's time. And yeah, thank you, everyone, for joining us. And if you're a school psychologist in a school district, please reach out to me. Okay, thanks, everyone.